Today, I'd like to share a fascinating story about a vengeful ghost and the relationship between a father and son by a deadly lake. On a calm winter morning in the village, Johnny left his house to go for a walk in the forest. When he reached the entrance of the compound, he saw his father, Mr. David, returning from outside. Johnny stopped in his tracks and greeted his father. "Father, are you back from outside?" "Yes, I am. Where are you heading?" "Haha, just the usual, father. Going for a walk in the forest to stretch my legs and enjoy the fresh air." "Alright, just be careful in the forest. You might run into a troop of monkeys," his father warned him. With that, Johnny bid his father goodbye and set off into the forest. Since it was late autumn, the forest was thick with dense vegetation, making it quite challenging for Johnny to navigate. As he continued his walk, he eventually reached a large lake deep in the forest. Upon arriving at the lake, Johnny felt an uneasy sensation in his gut. Before long, Johnny saw a large fish splashing in the lake and decided to go into the water to catch it. At that moment, a ghost with decaying flesh suddenly emerged from the lake, staring intensely at him. Johnny was petrified, not knowing what to do, and the ghost dragged him and the water with it. Meanwhile, as the evening approached and his son had not yet returned, Mr. David became worried. He grabbed a lantern and a rifle and headed into the forest to search for Johnny. Following the path Johnny had cleared earlier, Mr. David was relieved to find it and ran along the path. Eventually, he arrived at a large, foul-smelling lake. To explain the origin of this terrifying event, we need to go back about 10 years to when Mr. David and his friend Drake went wild boar hunting. On that day, while exploring the forest, they came across a wild boar foraging near the lake. David, armed with a knife, chased after the boar despite Drake's attempts to stop him. In his haste, David slipped and fell into the lake. Seeing David struggling in the water, Drake quickly ran over. He tied a rope to a tree and wrapped it around his waist before diving in to rescue David from the lake. David, driven by fear and adrenaline, managed to pull himself onto Drake and clamber out of the water. However, Drake had inhaled too much water and had lost consciousness. David, now worried for his friend, tried to pull the rope, but it snapped, causing Drake to sink into the lake. Terrified, David fled the scene. Years later, standing by the same lake, Mr. David suddenly recalled the horrific events. Just then, he spotted the lifeless body of his son Johnny floating on the water as he tried to rescue his son. A ghostly figure emerged from the lake, holding Johnny's body on his shoulder. "Ha ha ha, David. I've been waiting in this lake for 10 years just to see it again. Finally, I get to meet my old friend," the ghostly figure said. Despite the decayed appearance of the ghost, Mr. David immediately recognized the voice as that of Drake, who had drowned in the lake 10 years ago. "Drake, I'm so sorry. You died because of me. My son was nothing to do with this. Please let him go," David pleaded. "Yes, I died because of you. I will only be satisfied if you die as well. Otherwise, I'll drown your son right now," Ghost replied. In the end, Mr. David, filled with remorse and desperation, begged the ghost, offering his own life in exchange for his son. He tearfully pleaded with the ghost to spare his son. The ghost leaped out of the lake and grabbed Mr. David's throat with a fierce grip. "You will keep your word, David. Because of you, I died a terrible death. I'll never forgive you. So, as your final act, say goodbye to your son," the ghost said. The ghost, now revealed to be Drake, laid Johnny's body next to Mr. David. Mr. David, holding his unconscious son, began to cry intensely. "My son, after I'm gone, you must live wisely. I have to go now to pay for my sins. Goodbye, my boy," he said. Following the ghost's urging, Mr. David jumped into the lake, ending his own life. The next morning, Johnny regained consciousness by the lake, but he couldn't remember anything from the previous night. However, he found his father thrown and lifeless in the water and began to cry out in shock and grief. He was overwhelmed with confusion, unable to comprehend what had happened. People never know when the bad deeds they have committed will come back to haunt them. Therefore, it's important to avoid sinful and immoral actions as much as possible while we are still alive. I hope my friends enjoyed the story and take its message to heart. If you like to keep up with stories like this one in real time, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel.